No, it's great to be in the Carnage House. I love a bit of carnage.
Boys and girls, welcome back to your favourite podcast. It's the Carnage House podcast. I'm your host, Dougal Cameron. Today we are interviewing the lovely and powerful Evelyn Rae. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Evelyn is an author at Caldron Pool, an ex-police officer, a Twitter extraordinaire. I saw you do actually a backflip on Twitter today, which was very impressive.
Thank you.
I don't think I've ever done a backflip or ever gotten close. Pretty bad genetics. But today we're going to talk about a bunch of things. We've got policing, because Evelyn was a former police officer. We got Christianity and Caldron Pool and Evelyn's journey into becoming a cultural and political commentator. And we got your favourite segments as well, the beta male of the week, the alpha male of the week, and fan questions. Now, beta male of the week, only if you're on Patreon, as a thanks to our supporters. And, you know, that content's a bit too red hot for YouTube, so that's where you need to go, link in the description. And that's all the housekeeping I think I need to do before we get this going. So thanks very much for joining us. I want to give a quick shout out to Caldron Pool as well, because they're helping me in my work, doing some stuff for Craig Kelly, and they've been awesome for Craig Kelly. I don't know if you've been involved. I know Rod's done a lot, but big shout out to Caldron Pool. I like them a lot.
Yeah, Rod's pretty on top of it all. Yeah, and Ben. I haven't had the pleasure of doing it personally myself, but yeah, we're all very much for supporting him and what he's doing. So, yeah.
Well, that's good, because I wanted to talk about policing first off, and this is kind of one of the places Craig can get in trouble, is being anti-lockdown. And, you know, I want to talk about lockdowns separately later on and the policing involved around lockdowns, because we've got a fan question about it. But I do want to talk about police to start off. And police over the past, let's say, 18 months to a year have been copping a lot, particularly in America, but to some extent in Australia. And what, from a police officer's perspective, like, how do you kind of see that? Do you think some of that anger towards the police is justified or not, or what do you feel like?
So yeah, it's been a topic where I'm quite torn because, you know, like it's really hard to sort of understand until you've served, or, you know, whether it be military or police or some other form of emergency services. But there is this like camaraderie, there is this morale, like you all bleed blue. And it's something that you can't shake. I did almost 12 years. So like I have like a real heart and soul for the police. And I think most of them do a great job. But then on the other hand, as a Christian conservative and somebody who prefers small government, it's really hard to not be disappointed at the same time with things that we're seeing the police doing, you know, all the videos that are coming out, especially in Victoria, you know, and yeah, I'm sort of torn. It's a bit different, American policing to sort of policing in Australia. Like, I think culturally they're two different things. Like, it's very hard to compare them. I think American police, everything that happened with the George Floyd incident kind of really made me want to defend the police because, you know, one bad apple doesn't make the whole bunch a bad lot, and I think that's what we saw. But then in Australia, yeah, I've been really disappointed with some of the arbitrary restrictions and the enforcement of them. So very torn on the matter, if I'm honest, completely honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, I saw Ben Shapiro do actually quite, and there's sometimes where I don't like Ben, but sometimes where I really do. He did a really good breakdown of the Derek Chauvin trial, and I thought there would probably be a decent chance he would get off in terms of reasonable doubt. That, you know, George Floyd had so much, like 3 times or 4 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, but it almost seemed like, you know, and that's the only reason I bring that up, is because that might be considered reasonable doubt, where most people would look at what Chauvin did and be like, you know, really, you know, that's not how you should have gone about it. Could easily, in most people's eyes, be murder, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, we will get to Victoria, but in, like, how do you think police can... do you think the policing problem is... like, when I say policing problem, the relationship between the police and civilians is, like, is the same in Australia as it is in America, or do you think there's a big difference?
I think there's a big difference. I think that the standard of, I guess, your employment is different. So, and again, culturally speaking, like, we don't have the same gun problems that America has. We do have guns in Australia, don't get me wrong. I had a colleague shot and killed by an illegal firearm. So I'm not saying that they're not here in Australia, but, you know, every single vehicle stop in America, every single police officer has to kind of approach it on edge and with the, you know, full belief that they're most likely going to have a weapon in the car, whereas in Australia, we can kind of go up to a car and, you know, knock on the window, and we don't have that sort of stress, I guess you would say. So I don't like to judge too much on how Americans deal with it in comparison to Australia, because I think it's very different. But in terms of a lot of the issues that we're seeing with police, like in today's day and age, I think 99% of the problems that we have, like the bad, negative things with the police, could be squashed and finished if the whole recruitment process was completely different. Our recruitment processes here, and I'm guessing in America as well, I think are changing, and I think it's gone from quality to quota, unfortunately. And I think that people who shouldn't be police are being recruited because on paper they might tick all of the boxes that's required, but, you know, put them on the street and, you know, they've got a tin can and a marble for a brain and they've got no idea how to actually be a good operator. So I think, yeah, most of the problems we're seeing in Australia is poor recruitment and people who probably should not be in the job.
So is that like identity quotas in particular?
I think there's lots of things. Look, when I joined, I was 18. I was probably the quota, to be honest. Like, I was an 18-year-old girl and I got through. And there were probably men who were tradies or whatever else who may be really good who I got in before. And I'm happy to admit that. But, you know, I think that my service record and what I did showed that I wasn't, in the end, the quota, so to speak. But I think, you know, that was a long time ago that I joined, and it's gotten even worse since then.
So why did you as an 18-year-old decide to join the police?
Probably to annoy my parents a bit, I think. I grew up with a family who were in emergency services. I grew up with a dad who was, so I kind of knew no different, and I really was interested in law. Started sort of studying criminal law and decided I just could not represent criminals, so I may as well lock them up instead. So that's sort of how it happened. Yeah.
And how did that go for you? What type of things were you doing throughout those 12 years?
Yeah, so I sort of started off, everybody has to start off on the beat, you know, beat cop on the street, and then after a few years I became a detective and I worked at a lot of organised crime, child sex crimes, gangs, and yeah, I basically was not seen and did things behind the scenes, and then... Right.
Did you see that stuff come out like the last couple of days, the Operation Ironside stuff, where they just locked up like hundreds of international criminals?
Yeah, sometimes you will work on something for a good couple of years and it's like a protracted investigation, a strike force or something, and then it all comes down at the same time and it's like, boom, it's like it's been going on for a while. So cops work really hard at it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, they did a good job this time in actually tricking a lot of the criminals to using their own encrypted messaging app. So they tricked like some criminals into telling all these other criminals that they need to go and use this, I think it's called Acon or Anon or something like that. And anyway, so there's this one poor bastard who goes and tells all of his other crime friends to use this app that the FBI has got, and then they just pinned them all. And then the Australian police come out and say, we recommend this guy turns himself in because he's probably a target, and that guy's definitely already dead. I'm sorry. But anyway... not a funny story, but kind of funny. Now, this is a segment where we give back. This is called the Penthouse Alpha Male of the Week. Now, this is the latest the latest edition of Penthouse, Autumn Edition. Now, I've got a feeling Evelyn is going to have some potentially ideological problems with Penthouse, which I'm happy to flesh out later on. And I want to just be clear, this is a Carnage House endorsed Penthouse, not a Caldron Pool or Evelyn Rae endorsed Penthouse, but... This is a Penthouse Alpha Male of the Week, and we give it to the commenter, the person from our audience who nominates someone or something for being, standing up for the good in the world, and someone who's done something probably based. And I asked from the audience this week, we actually got an interesting response. Tommy C, he said, well, I am a straight guy, so I don't actually have an alpha male in my head, and I live in Taiwan. You guys don't send magazines to Taiwan, right? My alpha male would be myself or Will Smith, because we are both funny and easy to talk to. I hope the CCP doesn't block my post randomly, because I am an alpha guy myself. And so I just thought that was very funny, Tommy C. And we're going to find a way to send it to Taiwan, and you're going to get your magazine. Great job. If you want to get your Penthouse magazine next week, to anyone watching, comment who's the alpha male of the week and why, and you go into the running. It's a very wholesome segment. It's one of my favourites.
Good on Tommy C.
Tommy
Confident.
C. Great unit. So now I want to talk to you about, I guess, your transition. Did you go straight out of police into commentary, or what happened to you? I want to understand how you got into Caldron Pool and commentary.
Yeah, so I resigned from the police and was just going about my life post policing, and kind of just got caught up in it. I couldn't help myself, the way that the world's going, and it started off as something that I just thought would be like a hobby, just not commentating, but, having an opinion and kind of putting it out there. And
So did you start posting on Facebook? I know that's how our friend Joel started. Is that what you started?
Yeah, pretty much. I started out on Facebook. I didn't really have Twitter or anything at that stage. And just started kind of, branching off into those things. And if I found a subject that I felt particularly, I guess I had some form of authority to speak on, like something that I had studied or I had experience in, I would write an article and have it published. And that's kind of where it all came from. And then Facebook decided to censor me when I started posting about South Africa.
The farmers in South Africa?
Yeah. That was the hill that I died on. So I got a few breaches literally for just posting like a farm attack. And it was too violent or too gruesome, and I was just... Anyway, the whole Facebook debacle is thorn in the side. But, yeah, that kind of was the hill that I died on, and then they cut my views and my reach, and so then I branched onto Twitter, and I have no idea how I have not been done on Twitter so far, because I'm a little bit more brutal on Twitter than I ever was on Facebook, but
right.
I've managed to survive thus far.
Yeah, you are doing very well on Twitter, but there's almost a sense like, for example, when we're helping Craig a little bit with his social media, it's like you're almost certainly going to get banned. We need to set up backup accounts. We need to go onto alternative media platforms. Like, are you preparing in some type of way for your eventual banning or what?
Yeah, I'm on Gab, so I've started Gab. And funny, I logged on the other day and there was a blue tick, and I was like, oh.
Really?
That's nice.
That
Thanks,
Andrew,
nice. Whatever his name, who started Gab. Great Christian fella. But, I've got like a Telegram account. But they're basically inactive, but just there lingering in the background for in case. But, yeah, I guess it's a bridge that I'll have to cross, when I get there. I haven't really got a major backup plan other than that.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, thanks.
And... So you mentioned, whoever our friend who started Gap's a good Christian man, and you work at Caldron Pool, which is a specifically Christian news outlet. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so, have you always been a Christian? Did you become a Christian? And what attracted you to a news outlet that's specifically Christian to write for?
Yeah, so I grew up with a Christian family. I've always been in the church, but in all fairness and truthfulness, I probably took it on for myself in my early 20s. So, I've never been, I guess, a non-Christian, but there comes a point when you realise I'm only doing this because my parents did it, and then I'd say I took it on myself, in my early 20s. And the reason I like writing for Caldron Pool is because they are so unapologetically Christian, and I think part of what I believe the reason why we are where we are is because we have such a watered down view of conservatism, And I mean, I love libertarians. They're like my buddy. They're like my best friend. But we are very different. Like we are not the same. I think out of all the different ideological worldviews, we get along the best. We're like cousins, brothers, and we can coexist together. But we're very different. And I think a lot of the reason why conservatism is sort of dying in Australia is because our side of politics, which is kind of where I think a lot of the moral guidelines of society is crumbling at the foundations, because most conservative people are becoming more, I guess, I don't like to say, like we're watered down and we're almost becoming just like lefties, I guess. And so Caldron Pool, I like that they are just unashamedly, this is where we stand on things. And if you don't like it, well, read another news source. And so there's just nothing that they've posted that I could personally say I disagree with, or I don't like, or I couldn't put my name to that. So I'm quite comfortable sitting there.
Yeah, well, it is interesting. I heard someone say the other day that today's conservatives are just progressives driving at the speed limit, which I thought was actually quite good.
Yeah.
But this is one thing I try to ask people, because it seems like it's really hard to make $1 in political commentary now. Is Caldron Pool like a day job for you, or is it a hobby, or what would you say it is?
No, it's not. It's not a day job for me. None of us at Caldron Pool get paid. Ben, who runs Caldron Pool, it's out of his pocket. So
really,
yeah, he pays the money to host the website and create the website and does it all. I know that he used to get paid for like Facebook ads or things like that. It wasn't much, but it was a little bit of something. But then Facebook, like they do, censored, so that's completely gone. So all of us do it, for the love and the sport of it, I guess. So yeah, it's something that I think all of us who write at Caldron Pool feel is necessary, and none of us are kind of doing it for the purpose of money. I think most of us genuinely just want to make a better world for our kids and their kids, and this is sort of one way that we're all trying to contribute to that.
Well, that's very wholesome. I see Fiona, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't say anything to that. That was just wholesomeness. But I very much appreciate that, doing your bit to save the world. And you have been, on Sky News a little bit recently. How does that make you feel?
Oh yeah, a bit surreal. It's a huge blessing. Like I just feel so privileged to even be asked. I feel just like such a nobody who's just been given like, a little breadcrumb, and I'm just a little peasant. I'm happy with whatever can come my way. But look, I think, I like if more conservatives can kind of have this type of voice. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity, because Sky, I think, is a fantastic news source. I think it's probably the only semi-mainstream media in Australia that you can rely on. There's lots of alternative medias and things like.
So who do you like on Sky? Because there's a few people I don't mind. Some people I have mixed feelings about. Who do you like? I'm gonna have a guess. I'm gonna say you might like Rowan Dean. Do you like Rowan Dean?
Love Rowan Dean. He's just like a fighter. I really like that he is just unapologetic and so bold, and it doesn't seem like he holds back from what he thinks because people are telling him to. I love that he has an opportunity to actually speak his mind and not, do it in halves because he has to worry about his job or losing his job. I think he's a bit like Tucker Carlson, he just kind of has this platform and can just go for it, and I think it's great. But I don't really have anything bad to say about anyone there, but I do really appreciate a lot of their commentaries over there and some things that they talk about,
Now, one thing I did want to ask you is, I remember a little while ago, I just saw it come up on my Facebook feed, you started getting in a little bit of hot water about some comments about potentially traditional gender roles and things like that. I think it's pretty interesting in terms of like, you are someone who has spent a long time as like a cop, which is arguably a very masculine profession.
I'm a walking contradiction.
Yeah, maybe you are. But do you think, I guess, my final kind of question before I get to some fan questions and then beta mail of the week is like, it's one thing I haven't made up my mind on, in that when I look at kind of gender roles, like, I think it's very difficult to say that, you know, one person should be doing this, one other gender should be doing this, because at the end of the day, you're kind of all your own person. And I'm kind of like, from Penthouse, I believe, do what you want, don't care about social, you know, what do you call it, social conditioning or whatever. But at the same time, I also think there's like usually like potentially a masculine energy, like a feminine energy, some things that they're usually both better at, though maybe not all the time. So like, I'm kind of open to the idea, although I'm not sure. But what do you think about finally just the hot question of kind of gender roles and how Christianity plays into that?
Do I come across masculine? Do I give that vibe?
No, you don't. Well, to be fair, she probably could beat me up.
I could with 2 fingers. But yeah, it's a good question, and I'm more than happy to answer it. I had a career, a very successful career. I was in a male-dominant industry, and I did well for myself. I didn't let people down, and people could rely on me. However, the problem that I think with the gender roles is there's not an equal standard. And this is the problem that I have. I don't care what women do and what men do, but there should be a standard that you have to meet, and whoever gets there can win. And sure, there will be some women that can get there and some men that can't. And then that woman should get it. It should be the best person for the job. And when I joined the police, I had a different physical standard of entry to men. And not many people might know this, but I was allowed, as a woman, I didn't because I was stubborn and I was actually fit back then, but I could, if I wanted to get into the police, do push-ups on my knees, whereas the men had to do it on their feet. See, that to me is complete and utter crap and nonsense. That's what I don't like. And unfortunately for women, like, we are built differently to men. But if there are women out there who are built sufficiently to men and can match men, then I have absolutely no issue with what women do with their life and with their career. I think when women make a decision to become a wife and a mother, I think that their career should never overtake that. I think that women, if they want to be a mum, you should be a mum, and your career should never come at the cost of your child. If you can have the best of both worlds, which I very much doubt, then I have absolutely no issue with women who work. But I think it's when women choose to be selfish and, you know, be a mum, and then basically pop the kid out, shove it in daycare, you know, from 6 till 6 a day, and then they work on their career. That's where the gender role thing, I have an issue, because I think that, you know, it's almost the way that modern feminism has sort of made this topic. It's like a lesser thing to be a mum than to have a career. And I think that's really backwards. I think that being a mum is the best job that a woman can ever have. If some women don't want to, I couldn't care less. Do what you want. But if you make a choice to be a mum, that's when I think if you can have a career and be a mum, no problem. But it's when women have the me time and you know, I got to work on my career, so I'm going to shove my kid in daycare and have it indoctrinated, or that's where I have issue. But again, if there is an even playing field and there is one standard and women can get there, go for it. I got there, so I have no issue with it. But yeah, I don't know if I dribbled on too much then. If you have anything you want to clarify. No,
I think that's very good. We're actually famous on this show for dribbling, and you certainly did not dribble. Well, thank you very much. We got one more segment, just a couple of fan questions before we wrap this up and do Beta Mail of the Week, which is only available on Patreon. Okay, so firstly, it's kind of, we almost got into it, but I had try my best to avoid it. So my buddy Lachlan McDonald, he says, given the controversial debate of policing in Australian society during the COVID era and the associated lockdowns that have occurred, do you support the strict policing measures in some states? Or if you don't, how can you justify letting the virus run around like it did in the UK or the US or wherever?
Yeah, so I am very much against all of the arbitrary restrictions, but I very much try to approach this with a little bit of understanding because, as I said, I have this camaraderie, this morale, and I understand the recruitment process. Cops are joined and basically trained to think a certain way, and the way that cops are trained is to basically do what they're told. So I don't necessarily think it's the individual officer's fault in all cases. I have seen videos where I'm like, that bloke or that chick right there should be sacked, and I'm more than happy to call out the bad apples when I see them. But I think a lot of the problems that are faced with the police, especially that we've seen during COVID, is just a consequence of the recruitment process and the training of the police. We're not independent thinkers like we should be. We've lost the ability to harness our right as a police officer to use discretion. And that's something that I think, again, could be fixed if you kill the weed at the root. I think if we just go after, and say all cops right now during COVID are really bad, that's almost just like ripping the weed out without the root. It's just going to keep growing back in the same issues. I like to focus on what could actually stop these particular things, because right now there is such a gap between police and civilian, and it's really dangerous because I say this, if you want to make enemies with police, you better start making friends with criminals, because that's what you're going to be left with. And at the same time, police need to have the trust of the people. That's their job, to protect the people. And I'm more of a belief that the government should be, and that includes the branch of the police, should be there to protect our freedoms and rights, not hinder them. And the only way that police should hinder freedoms and rights is when people have broken the law and then they've lost that right. And that's why they get locked up. It's tricky topic for me because I guess I have more of an insight and understanding of the brain of a police officer. I thankfully became a detective pretty early on, and I worked with some amazing people where we were independent thinkers. But the cops that are just kind of coming through the academy really quickly and then just getting thrown into these busy metropolitan areas on the beat, and they've got cops that are like only 1 or 2 years senior to them, training them. It's just this really bad habit and culture that the police are breeding, but very much I'm against the arbitrary restrictions. They're actually, I don't know, I'll send you the link later and you can maybe put it up, but there are actually like a group of police in New South Wales who have actually suing the government for making them enforce these arbitrary restrictions.
Really?
So yeah, there were some New South Wales police, there are 2 or 3 officers who actually wrote an official letter to the Supreme Court, and they've actually employed these lawyers, and they're doing like a full like Royal Commission type suing of the Australian government for imposing the police on having to enforce these stupid COVID restrictions. And I think we should take our hat off to that, because these particular police, I actually tried to call them and I wasn't allowed to speak to them because of how serious it is. I don't know whether they've been punished or whether they're, being branded as something, but I think it's really encouraging to see that there are some really decent cops who are actually really against it, so much to the point where they've started a petition and they're getting other cops to sign it, and all these police are actually taking it to the court so that they don't have to enforce these things anymore.
100%. That's a very comprehensive answer, Lockie. You better be very happy with that. Now, the second question is from Kingdom Clothing, and we appreciate those boys. They gave us some free T-shirts. We like AJ, who runs that. So, AJ Saker, I'm going to say his name instead of the Kingdom Clothing account. He asked Evelyn, will you date me, please?
I don't even know who it is, but is that a serious question?
Very serious. He's
Very
a cute
serious.
guy. Can I tell you what? As a straight male, he is a cute guy.
I am not looking for love, so I apologise, AJ.
AJ, my boy, don't
but
give
I
up.
wish
You
you
got a chance.
I wish you all the best. Go to church and you'll find a really nice girl. That's the best place.
Yeah. Go to church, boy.
Yeah,
Probably the last
that's
thing you want to hear.
That's my best advice.
Alrighty, thank you very much. I'm going to continue with Evelyn on Beta Male of the Week, which you can go find on Patreon. Links in the description. What do we need to cover? I'm always looking at Fiona. What's your social media that people can check you out on? You've got a good Twitter, which we'll put down in the description. I'll put a link to your articles on Caldron Pool. You mentioned Gab. I'll throw a link in there and make sure verified.
Yeah. So you want the handle or just?
Yeah, just tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, just Twitter at Evelyn Rae, Facebook at Evelyn Rae, but you might not find me because I'm stonewalled. Instagram, I only just started Instagram like at the start of the year, I think. Had to delete my account. So yeah, I'm on there, slowly building it back up.
We'll put all those links in the description. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. I was supposed to say that at the start of the video. Instagram, Facebook, Carnage House Productions, Twitter. We're now on Twitter as well. I don't think there's that much else. Thank you very much, Evelyn, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it was a fun time. And let us know what you think in the comments. Alpha Male of the Week, win your Penthouse magazine. Anyway, enough dribbling. Peace.